Item is a discussion regarding the Conservation District fee schedule amendment. Mr. Dertinger, you had something on this?
As discussed in a previous meeting, without an engineer, they're not going to continue doing the work for this delegation, so they're going to suspend collecting these monies.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What does that do to the delegation agreement that they have? Does that impact it at all? Will
Yeah, no,
will it
they've
do-
currently suspended with with PACD. And those elements will now be sent to other PACD offices.
So when will they get another person in that position, or is that not in the future?
We are putting in the budget an increase for that position, so I suspect that we'll be taking another run at that in January.
Okay, so in January, so then the fee schedule would go back to wherever it is?
Yes.
And how does this impact any fees that would come to the county at all?
The fees don't come to the county. The fees go to Conservation District to pay their costs. And it would be paying the costs for the engineer and other elements that people will now be paying to PACD or to another.
Right, but at the end of the year, there's always that money that comes back.
There is not.
No?
No, we talked about that the last meeting. We generally fund, there is, that money that goes to them comes from us. When there's money that's left over, it's generally general fund balance money that we had spotted them in the beginning of the year. They don't have extra money at the end of the year. They've only had 1 year out of 20 that they, 3 years out of 20 that they broke even or did a little better than that.
Okay, just to clarify that. And who is the person who left? Was that,
Dan On?
who?
Dan On?
Oh, okay. I honestly thought it was somebody else. So, all right. Thanks.
Anything else? Ms. Fargo Hefner?
So you just stated that you were going to reclassify the amount, or you were going to increase the amount for the engineer? Did I hear you correctly?
We're recommending an increase in the pay for the engineer in this year's budget, this coming budget.
Did you need to move that up sooner to be able to get an engineer? Like, do we have to wait till January to do so if they need an engineer so badly?
Again, when we discussed this, they've only had an engineer for about 5 or so years, so that's a new part of their delegation, and PACD can do this work.
But then we don't collect any money.
It would
But
be,
we don't pay the money either.
So I don't know that that answers my question. I hear that you're going to do it in January. Can you do it sooner? Are you, or is the administration unwilling to do this prior to January?
It's not a matter of willing.
Because I think that based on what we heard last time, council would approve it sooner. We get these things all the time. So if you wanted to do it sooner, I
Noted.
don't think you'd have a problem.
Yeah, I would have no objection to increasing the salary if a qualified candidate were to present themselves. So I don't see why we're not just continuing to recruit rather than waiting until January. So
I don't know that we've stopped recruiting, so I would have to check that. I don't know that that's true.
is the job still posted? Okay.
yeah, that would be a question.
Anything else on this? Okay. Do we have a motion to move it ahead? Anybody else? Who's on the finance?
I am, I guess. I'll move it ahead.
Okay, thank you. Next is the discussion regarding the local share account grant, Lehigh and Northampton counties for P25 base stations. Mr. Dertinger again.
Yes, this is what we had started, and we talked about with the grant money that we had put forward initially for about $5 million. It got us about 80% of the county covered. So we're continuing to pursue other grant opportunities to pick up the other areas. It's essentially breaks out to be one site at a time now that we're trying to address to expand into the places that were not covered on the original $5 million.
Okay. I see Mr. Weaver's here.
is here.
Could he come up and tell us what's not covered and what needs to take place?
Good evening. The current project that we're doing with the expansion now covers mostly the southern portion of the county. And that was based off of, that is where 80% of our call volume is. So that's where a lot of our fire EMS police calls are. So now with that and getting the propagation maps and seeing where those radio coverage is, now we start looking at where some of those holes are instead of just saying we're going to populate 6 towers and we may not need the 6 towers. So once that comes up, we'll go through with this grant money and we'll say, okay, what next site gives us the best bang for our buck to get the best coverage? Otherwise, you can just throw it there and then you can have all these towers, may not need them, and you're paying a lot of money in maintenance, and we can maybe eliminate one. So right now, it's kind of, when we do these extra towers, it's more of a slower growth to make sure we target some of those areas.
Mr. Myers?
Maybe you might want to explain what the P25 base stations are, since we
They're
have
the
new
actual radios that are on the site that do the transmitting. It's part of the trunk system. I can go way technical, but I think Charles would pull me off the microphone right now. But it's the frequencies we talk on.
It's a matter of upgrading our current equipment so that it will be able to work with the existing equipment that people have, and it'll move us forward to be more of a digital equipment rather than analog as most of it is.
Are the smaller places, are they prepared to do some of this changing?
Their stuff will still work on this.
They'll still be able to have
It'll just
analog?
It will just provide us larger amount of bandwidth or talk circumstances for the areas that we need to address.
So Northern Interior is where we have the biggest problem, where we have
Aside from not being a little bit more spread out, it's also topographically the most difficult area to cover.
So the grant amount is for $233,400. Do we have to match that, or how does that work?
No.
Do we know?
No, that's
There's no
correct.
match required?
No.
Nope. Okay. Any other questions on this? Do we have a motion to move this forward?
So moved.
Okay, so it'll be on tomorrow's agenda. Thank you. And then the next item is a discussion regarding local share account grant in Monroe. Oh, we just did that. That's
No,
it.
there-
Oh, there's another
One's
one.
us and one's Monroe.
Oh, okay, okay. So then for Monroe County, any difference? What's the difference here?
Same thing, continuing to move forward to provide better coverage.
Okay, so this is the same amount, 233,400. Any questions on the Monroe amount? Why is it being split between two different pots? I'm just curious.
That's what the Senate did when they moved it away from us. So there is the Monroe LSA grant where they don't have a specific area like we do here with the Lehigh.
From the gaming?
Right, yep.
Okay, so we're dipping into what was once ours and what typically was theirs that was shared from
Yeah.
the original legislation. Okay, I remember that. Any further questions? That being said, is there anything further for the Finance Committee? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Linda, Matt Assange from the LVTC wants to attend the CAP projects meeting. I told him to be here at 4:45 or 4:40. Should we wait until he gets here? It's the only thing on the agenda.
Is there any way to call him and see if he can come earlier?
I don't know where he is, but I don't know how much quicker he'll be able to move if I tell him now.
Well, we
Yeah.
can take a 15-minute break or so